Well, the biggest thing I keep telling people, and nobody seems to listen to me, first person I ever had to fire, we're adding another subject, and it is not one that many people have expected. I could see his butt crack. And then it started growing, like his butt started growing. Started really realizing, okay, we can be a little more savage. I actually believe that as AI matures, what's going to be most valuable, the only thing he wants in life is for you to do your lesson. And the obstacle is that you're lazy.
Yetis, bonjour, buongiorno, harabi, marhaba, ni hao, aloha, and konnichiwa.
Our guest today can say hello in every one of those languages.
True.
Probably Dothraki too.
Because Duolingo is the largest language app on the planet, used by 40 million people every day.
But Luis Van Ahn aspires for more than just language learning.
Because he wants his app to become the world's first super app for all things education.
Our guest today, Luis Van Ahn, was born in Guatemala, but launched this tech business in Pittsburgh, PA.
Although his app uses all the growth hacks that were invented in Silicon Valley.
He created a mascot so popular, Dua Lipa is trying to date it.
An unhinged owl mascot that's such a meme, it got its own skit on SNL.
And on today's show, Luis will announce Duolingo's next product.
That's right, Duolingo's next new thing will be revealed right here on T-Boy.
Yetis, today we are sitting down with the Lord of the Language.
The Sultan of Streaks.
The Baron of being bilingual.
Luis Van Ahn is the co-founder and CEO of Duolingo.
There ain't any subtitles in today's episode, Yetis.
Nope.
But watch out for that unhinged owl.
Because that thing is a raptor with some major boundary issues.
Today's interview with Luis of Duolingo is the best one yet.
Luis, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. That's quite an intro.
Welcome, man. Great to have you. Really great to have you. Although we have been doing extensive research on you for weeks, and we did discover you're a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
I am definitely a people pleaser. Yes.
Guilty as well.
Full disclosure over there, Jack?
Have I ever told you the story about why I am Nick? It's what my dad taught me.
Why, you're a people pleaser?
Yeah. So my dad told me his favorite book growing up was this book by Gail Sayers, and it's called I Am Third. It basically says, like, prioritize your friends and family before you take care of yourself. And so that's how I was raised. And yes, I'm very concerned with how everyone else is doing.
So you're saying it's nurture, it's not nature when it comes to people pleasing?
Yeah, but of course, we all know the pitfalls of being a people pleaser, right, Luis?
Luis, how did your people pleasing begin? The origin story?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure it has something to do with how I was brought up, but I always wanted to please people.
Well, now I feel I could be very selfish and just ask things of both of you guys.
One of the big problems for me is I've gotten a lot better, but as somebody who runs their own company and I'm a people pleaser, I sometimes have to tell people things they don't want to hear. Mm-hmm. So I've gotten really good at sugarcoating stuff.
Oh, yeah?
But that's not good. It's not good. I've had to unlearn that.
What's your sugar-coated compliment sandwich, Luis?
No, I mean, at this point, I don't do this, but I will tell you, for example, the first person I ever had to fire didn't understand that they were being fired because I sugarcoated it so much that they showed up the next day.
Oh, God.
They showed up the next day, and I'm like, I thought I fired them. So I've gotten a lot better at being direct, but that has taken a lot of training.
Okay, well, in the meantime, Luis, I'm in the enviable position of having two guys who are people pleasers on my right and on my left over here. So midway through the interview, I may ask for a sandwich or something.
15 years before this song, two boys from the Northeast met in a dorm. They had an idea that caused a cultural storm. It's the best one yet, but the best is the norm. Jack, Nick, that's it. I don't even think they need to practice. 50%, that's a fat tip. T-Boy City on your list. If you know, you know, cause we ready to go. We can't wait no more, so just start the show. Start the show. Start the show.
First, a quick word from our sponsor.
Well, Luis, we are so excited to have you on today's show because we haven't just been researching you for weeks. We've been covering your company for years, and now we get to actually speak with someone who is the brains behind it. So you founded Duolingo and IPO'd the company in 2021. 40 million humans use it every day. 10 million of them are paid subscribers. You're growing 40% a year right now. The stock has more than doubled in the past 2 years. The company's worth more than $13 billion. That's like 2 lifts. Duolingo is the most exciting education brand on the planet.
Luis, we've heard you say before that you've made enough money at this point that your kids will never have to work. Congratulations. But your childhood was very different from what your kids are experiencing here in the States. Can you tell us, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I had very young stuff like a fireman and police officer, but generally I wanted to be a math professor starting at around age 12. That got pretty set after age 12. Before that, it was like whenever I watched a movie, I wanted to be that.
Yeah.
But at around age 12, I got set into wanting to be a math professor. I don't know. I really got into it. I ended up becoming a professor, not quite math. I became a professor in computer science, and I liked it. But it turned out that I liked being a CEO better.
But Luis, when you were growing up, you had a very unique relationship with your mom because your mom was an incredibly dynamic person. Can you tell us more about your mother and like what she accomplished? Because that set a lot of the groundwork for you.
Yeah, my mom's an amazing person. She's still around. She grew up. She's from Guatemala, just where I grew up too. She became a doctor. But one of the things that's amazing about it is she became the third ever female doctor in Guatemala because there was no real way to become a doctor in her time if you were a female. In fact, the whole, the medical college didn't even have bathrooms for women. But my mom, she really, really doesn't care what other people think. So, for example, the way she went to the bathroom is she just went to the bathroom even though there were men there. She just didn't care. And I think that's just been my mom the whole time. It requires a certain level of quirkiness and awkwardness to be able to be very early in a career where nobody else has done that before you. But she did that. So she was always pretty amazing. She had me at a late age. She had me at age 42. And also an only child, so it was just the two of us. And she always valued, the thing that she valued the most was my education. And somehow she spent all her resources on my education. She got me a computer when I was 8 years old. I wanted a Nintendo. She wouldn't get me a Nintendo. She got me a computer. I was pretty pissed off, but it's probably the best gift it's the best gift I ever got because it actually got me in to learn how to use a computer. I learned how to program at an early age because she got me that computer. But interestingly, she didn't know anything about computers. She had never used a computer. Still to this day, she has never used a computer. I'm not kidding. She has not used a computer or a smartphone to this day.
You wanted the N64. She got you the Gateway, and that set you on a very different course of life.
Let me just say that I'm a little older than that. So I wanted the Nintendo, and she got me the Commodore 64.
Oh, okay. Full disclosure, I didn't know what that was.
Well, it is an older computer. It's way before Windows.
Luis, can you set the scene for us as well on what is it like growing up in Guatemala when you were a kid? What does it look like?
We were, fortunately, since my mother was a doctor, by the way, doctors in Guatemala are not millionaires, so it's not like she was a millionaire or anything, but we were kind of straight up middle class. So that was, it's a very poor country, and you see a lot of poverty, but we weren't it's not like we had dirt floors or anything like that. We had a house. It was a small house, but we had a house. There was a civil war going on when I was growing up. The civil war ended it lasted like 30 years. It ended in 1996. So for the first, call it 17-ish years of my life, there was a civil war. It's interesting because I lived in Guatemala City, which Guatemala is there's two Guatemalas. There's Guatemala City and the rest of the country. The fortunate thing was that the civil war was in the rest of the country, not in the city. So in the city, the only thing that you heard is every now and then people would get kidnapped, and every now and then the power would go out because the opposition in the civil war would take out some power plant. That's kind of what you felt in the city, but there really was a civil war, so that was interesting.
Was your family affected by that? Kidnappings or?
My aunt was kidnapped.
Really?
My mother's sister was kidnapped for a week. That happened. And that, by the way, was one of the reasons I came to the U.S. She was kidnapped in early 1996, and that's when I came to the U.S. when I decided two things. I wanted to study math, and you couldn't do that in Guatemala. And second, I didn't really want to be scared of being kidnapped. So I was like, I'll go to the U.S. I am from Guatemala, but I came here legally, okay, everybody? Don't try to kick me out.
We're glad you did. And did you and your mother come together to Guatemala, or were you older?
To the U.S., no, I came for college and she stayed. And then now she's moved to the U.S. She moved because of COVID, and now she lives here.
Luis, you come to the United States, and you kind of fulfill that prophecy of becoming a math professor in some ways. MacArthur Fellowship for Geniusness. You study math at Duke, who I assume you had on your March Madness bracket as well. What was going through your mind? What was life on campus like? I mean, you're surrounded by all these American students who haven't experienced civil war in their countries. What is that like for you? Did you feel like an outsider, an insider? What was it like being on the campus?
It was not that weird. I mean, the good news is universities like Duke have a lot of international students. I mean, I don't remember the exact fraction of international students that were there when I was there, but it felt like a good fraction. So there were people from all over the world. Obviously, there were a lot of Americans, but there were people from all over the world. It didn't feel that weird, although this was back in the 90s when it was okay to make fun of somebody about where they come from. So my nickname was Guatemala.
Yeah, I can be the only Guatemalan.
That would not be okay these days. There's all this stuff that was just not okay.
We're laughing because you're laughing right now.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I didn't mind it, but that's how it was. But I think, I generally fit in. It was the good news is I went to an American school in Guatemala, which is, that's really changed my life because of I went to an American school in Guatemala. I could come to college here. So I was a little Americanized. I mean, I watched all the same TV shows that people here watched, et cetera. So that made me fit in.
So let's transition from this Nintendo-deprived computer-owning boy in Guatemala
well put, Jack.
Who's graduated from Duke. You went on to Pittsburgh at the Carnegie Mellon University, where you got a PhD. Now, Yetis, if you've never heard of Luis Fanon, and even if you've never used Duolingo, you've used his products.
Yes,
because
you have.
This. In the year 2000, Luis, you noticed a problem that Yahoo was facing, the big tech company at the time. You created a solution that changes online security forever. You created Captcha. How did you do that?
Yeah, so it wasn't just me. There was my PhD advisor too. So I was getting a PhD, and my PhD advisor, Manuel Blum, and we listened to this talk. At the time, Yahoo, this is the year 2000. Yahoo at the time, if you may not even have heard of it anymore, but at the time, it was like the biggest tech company out there. It was like Google.
Yeah. It's making a comeback right now.
Okay, making a comeback. But it was really big. And the guy who was the chief scientist at Yahoo gave a talk, and I was in the audience, and the talk was about 10 problems that they didn't know how to solve at Yahoo. And I was a very enterprising PhD student, and I thought, well, I'm going to try to solve all these 10 problems. It turned out 9 out of those 10, I didn't even understand what the problem was. But for this one particular problem, I actually understood it, and I went home, and we thought about it a lot with my PhD advisor. And the problem was that there were people who were obtaining millions of email accounts every day because Yahoo was giving email accounts for free. People wrote programs to obtain millions of email accounts for free. And the reason they wrote those programs was to send spam, because what happened was each Yahoo account only allowed you to send like 1,000 emails per day. They wanted to send millions of emails per day, like spam emails. So they wrote programs to obtain thousands and thousands of accounts, or sometimes millions of accounts. And from each one, they would only send a few hundred. And Yahoo did not know.
In 1 minute, some random guy can create 1 million email accounts.
And if you're Yahoo, you're not happy about that, Luis, right?
Correct. They were not happy, and they were trying to come up with ways to stop that, but they really couldn't. And then we came up with this idea that a human cannot come up with, cannot get 1 million email accounts, because you get bored after like 10. But the problem is that computer programs could do that. So we came up with this idea that if we could have a test that tested whether the thing getting an email account was a human or a computer, then we could solve this problem. And this is where we came up with this Captcha, which originally what it was is these distorted letters, because at the time, computers could not read distorted letters. This, of course, has changed. By now, computers can do a lot of things, including read distorted letters. But at the time, computers could not read distorted letters. So this is why whenever, and when we came up with that solution, it actually worked, and it started getting used all over the internet. But this is why whenever you were getting an email account, or whenever you were trying to post on a blog or something, you had to type these distorted, hard-to-read letters.
Now, So every time we had to prove that we were a human
Yeah.
on the computer,
was
that's thanks
Luis.
to the product that you and your PhD advisor created.
Jack, Luis is the guy who's asking you, are you a robot or not? That's what you're
I am
getting at.
sorry. And by the way, this year, one of the Oscars was won by a short film about somebody who continually fails their Captcha. So
That's tough.
There's even an Oscar behind
That's
this. Okay?
tough. To be told by a robot every day that you're not a human, when you are in fact a human.
Yeah, it's pretty
Now,
insulting, Jack.
Luis, isn't CAPTCHA an acronym?
It is an acronym. It is an acronym for something very long, but it's completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. So there's a little bit of cheating there because there's a lot of T's. We only turned it into one T, but it is an acronym.
So
If
what
anyone knows that acronym, it's you.
So Jack and I we were wondering before the show, what did you do with it? Like you created something here, 0 to 1, out of nothing. What happened to CAPTCHA and how did that affect your life?
Well, a couple of things. The original CAPTCHA, this was the year 2000. I was a PhD student. My advisor was a professor. We didn't know how to commercialize anything. So what we did is we gave it to Yahoo for free. Yahoo used it, and then everybody started just kind of copying it, and no money was made from this. It was just it just kind of happened. I don't have any complaints about that because I was very happy that this got use all over the place. I mean, it really got adopted by essentially every major website on the internet was using these. So I was pretty happy with that. It gave me a great story to tell whenever I was in parties.
It's a good,
Right.
It's a good bar story. Very
It's
good.
a
Get this guy a drink. He created CAPTCHA.
No. It's usually people hated me, but it's a good story.
Put my drink on his tab. He created CAPTCHA.
Now, this next part is absolutely wild. You go on to create another version of the same product.
ReCaptcha.
How did that come about?
And you end up selling that to Google, and that's when you first made the money, as you put it, so that your kids never had to work again.
Yeah, I mean that was so. The year 2000 helped invent CAPTCHA. Then fast forward a few years pass. It's the year 2005, 2006. Every major website is using it. Every CAPTCHAs. Everybody has seen them. Everybody has been annoyed by them. And then I just kind of did a little back of the envelope calculation about how many times per day somebody was typing one of these. And the number I came up with was I didn't actually know. I just kind of did a calculation, and it's about 200 million times a day somebody was typing a CAPTCHA. And I thought, okay, first I was pretty proud of myself. I thought, look at the impact that I've had. Then I started thinking, most people are annoyed by this. And in addition to that, it takes about 10 seconds of your time. And if you multiply 200 million by 10 seconds, you get that humanity as a whole is wasting like 500,000 hours every day typing these things because of me. And so I started actually thinking, well, okay, I started feeling bad. And then I started thinking, can we do something useful with this time? These 500,000 hours, and it occurred to me that we could actually, and the idea was that, and this is the idea of ReCaptcha, which ended up becoming a company. The idea was that as you were typing those CAPTCHAs, you were helping us digitize books, and let me explain how that worked.
Wow.
So at the time, there was all these projects trying to take all of the books that there was 100 million books had been written. Before the computer era that were in book format, not in a computer, and we needed to put them online. The way the digitization worked is that you would basically take a book and you would take a digital photograph of every page of the book, and then a computer needed to decipher all the words in that digital photograph. But you remember back then, computers were not very good at deciphering text that was not perfectly clear. And sometimes because the books had aged or the photograph that was taken was not very clear, it turned out that about 30% of the words in this book digitization project could not be recognized by the computer. And that was a problem. But it occurred to me that we have all these people just typing distorted words on the internet, so why don't we just give them some of those words that are coming from books and have them type it? So this was the idea, and so what we started doing is we made a whole system that would take the books, that would take the scans of the books. It would try to decipher all the words. The ones that it couldn't decipher, it would send to humans while they were typing a CAPTCHA on the internet. So some of the words that you got were not randomly chosen letters or anything. It was words from a book. And we used what you typed to help digitize the book. Now, of course, there was many mechanisms to make sure that this was correct. We would wait that, we would see that 10 different people would type the same thing, et cetera, and then make correct. And it turned out this really worked. We were able to digitize or help digitize a lot of things. And because of that, Google bought ReCaptcha in 2009, which was this two-sided thing. On the one side, it provided security to websites. And on the other side, it was using what the humans were doing to help digitize books.
As you would put it, it was feeding two birds with one scone. Right, Jack?
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Better than killing them with a stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Duo would love that version
Duo
of
doesn't want to be
the
killed.
idiom. Nick, I'm picturing his therapy session where he's sitting on the couch and he says, Doc, I can't believe it. The thing I invented is wasting 1 million human hours every day. I feel horrible about it. And then the doctor says, well, why don't you create a newer version that digitizes the world's books at the same time?
Yes, it was the therapist's idea. Yes.
All the credit always goes to the therapist. Well, Luis, you sell this company, this solution to Google. You sell that product to Google. But despite making a sum of money for which you don't have to work again, you do decide to work again.
What leads you to create a little language app called Duolingo?
Yeah, I mean, I had just sold ReCaptcha. I knew that I wanted to do something like another project. I actually considered retiring. I was like, well, I don't really have to work anymore. But that I pretty quickly realized. I mean, I was around 30 years old then, and I was like, that's going to be a long life. It's going to be a long life if I'm going to retire and just watch a lot of TV.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, there was not as much streaming as there is now in terms of...
Yeah, it's a different calculation these days.
TikTok hadn't arrived. There was much less to do.
Chilling is intimidating back then.
Yes. So I thought, okay, I need to start a project. And I wanted to do something that was related to education, because education has been always something so important to me. So I decided to start a project related to education. I was fortunate that at that time, what I had done is I had gone back to Carnegie Mellon to be a professor. And I was fortunate that I had a PhD student who I loved and I still love, named Severin. And we were looking for a PhD thesis topic for him. He needed to do a PhD thesis. And I kind of wanted to start a big project too. And I said, okay, let's work together on something. And let's work on education. And then kind of one thing led to another, and we decided that the thing we needed to work on was a thing to teach languages. And so we started working on Duolingo together, and, Severin these days is the CTO of Duolingo. He's still here. And so we co-founded Duolingo, and then we've grown it.
Now, Duolingo at its heart, it begins and still is a tech company. And you've said the majority of your employees and your engineers and your designers, they are tech people. Same as every other tech company. But unlike every other tech company, you've chose to launch, grow, and scale yours in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
In fact, you've said you would never open an office in Silicon Valley, the home of tech. Why is Pittsburgh your headquarters?
Well, we were here, and we wanted to stay here. I mean, I was here because I was a professor at Carnegie Mellon. Severin was also here because he was a PhD student here. And so we were here, and we decided we saw no reason to move at the time. And then we just started growing, and at some point we were kind of too big to move. In retrospect, a lot of people have asked me what would have happened had I started Duolingo in Silicon Valley. And of course, it's impossible to tell what really could have happened. Like, I don't know. There's pros and cons of having created it here. Some of the good things are, one is the people that you hire here stick around for a very long time. In fact, if you look at right now our employees, I mean, the average tenure is pretty high. I mean, a lot of people have been around for a long time. That's a good thing because you get these people that get really good at what they do because they've been doing it for 8 years or however long. So that's a good thing. The other thing that I think was good was in terms of hiring executives, it allowed us to hire we punched above our weight because we ended up hiring an executive team, many of whom, for one reason or another, had long careers, for example, in Silicon Valley, but had to be here in Pittsburgh, either because they had aging parents here in Pittsburgh or something, and they had to be here for one reason or another, and we were the best game in town. And so had we been in Silicon Valley, they wouldn't have worked for us. They were kind of outside of our league.
Right.
So that this allowed us to hire really good executives. That's another thing.
Bigger fish in a smaller pond.
Yes, we were the biggest fish in this pond.
Yeah.
That was good. That helped us. And then the last thing that helped us, I think, is, when we started in 2011, education has never been hot in terms of, funding or whatever. It's just what it allowed us to do being here in Pittsburgh is it allowed us to not get distracted by the latest fads. I'm pretty sure that had we been in Silicon Valley, we would have quickly, at the time it was like hyper local apps, and then it was like social apps, and then it was like crypto, and then it was like, I'm pretty sure that we would have gone through all of this. And at this point, Duolingo would be like
I got an AI SaaS platform we're side hustling outside this podcast right now, Luis.
And, it's not that it's that obviously Silicon Valley is amazing. There's all kinds of good things about it. But for something like education, I think you want to stay for a long time just concentrated on what you're doing and growing it and growing it and growing it. And I think being outside of Silicon Valley helped us for that. Of course, there were many downsides. I mean, sometimes hiring here was slow. I mean, we couldn't find the right person. Most of the people that we've hired to work here in our Pittsburgh office, we've moved from other cities to work here, which is why we've opened an office in New York. We have a few offices, but we have a relatively large one in New York, and that actually helped us hire quite a bit. We're pretty happy with our location strategy at the moment, which, by the way, our location strategy at the moment seems to be to have offices in gray places. Not great, gray. Like Seattle, we have an office in Seattle. We have an office in Berlin. We have an office in Detroit. We have an office in Pittsburgh. We're masters of gray places, and that was not on purpose. That's just what ended up happening.
You guys look at like the percentage of precipitation every year.
We don't, but we may as well.
That's where
we
you
may
open
as
this place.
well. It really is this, and we also have an office in Beijing, which is great for different reasons because of pollution. But basically, we have an office in great places. So,
have you noticed a correlation between your employees' morale and performance and the Pittsburgh Steelers making the playoffs?
True, that's a good point, Jack.
No. Weirdly, I mean, obviously we have some Steelers fans here, but because most of our employees come from other cities, and we also have many international employees.
Oh, yeah.
If you go to a Duolingo lunch table, very little conversation about the Steelers. You would think it's a lot more. If you go outside
Unless
of
they're
Duolingo,
practicing their Spanish.
Yes. So, I mean, Pittsburgh
Jack-
is this funny thing with the Steelers where if you're in an airport, you know which gate is Pittsburgh because everybody's wearing Steelers paraphernalia.
Yeah, there's yellow and black. You follow the colors.
But that is not Duolingo.
Our other theory was that the Pittsburgh Penguins hockey team has like 12 different languages spoken on it. So we assumed that was, somehow involved in focus groups for Duolingo.
They keep wanting to get money from us for that reason, but we haven't done that.
No one knows what the coach is saying.
So, Luis, back to when you were founding the company in Pittsburgh, either on the campus at Carnegie Mellon or when you'd moved into your own office. When did you have the aha moment that you had product market fit?
Was there a data point? Was there a day? Was there a person? Was
anecdote?
There
The first time that I thought,
that's it.
first time that I thought, for the first a couple of years, I had no idea if this was going to last. I was fine by myself because I had just had this big success with ReCaptcha, so I was fine. But I didn't really know that it was going to succeed. I mean, I kept on working on it. I was working very hard on it, but I didn't know if it was going to succeed. The first time that I thought, this really is going to be something big, is when it was 2013. At the end of 2013, we won the iPhone App of the Year. And at the time, this was like a big deal. I mean, the previous iPhone App of the Year had been Instagram. Like, it was like a big deal. And so at that time, I'm like, oh, wow. There's who knows how many iPhone apps. There's hundreds of thousands of iPhone apps. And somehow they chose us to be the one iPhone App of the Year.
Wow.
That from then on, I thought, okay, this is at least here to stay.
I bet you that judge at Apple was a Steelers fan.
Yeah. Or he was trying to learn Spanish. So then, after you have that product market fit, like what was the next big thing? We're like, okay, we don't just have a fit. We don't just have potential. What was the moment you started actually taking off? Was it after that? Was there another notch?
Okay, let's see. Duolingo has never had a year where we grew. I mean, maybe the first year because you start with one user and you grow a lot. But we've never had a year where we like multiply by 100. Like that, we've had very steady, significant growth every year. But if you just plot our curve. Like it's just what is amazing about our growth is that every year we just grow and grow and grow, and we're continuing to grow, and this is good. But it's never, a lot of times these social networks just go nuts in one year. We've never had that. I guess because we're not a social network. I don't know what it is, but our growth has just kind of been very, very steady every year. So there wasn't a moment specifically like that, but I would say the big thing that happened after. So we launched. We were very fortunate when we launched that very quickly we became the most downloaded app in education. This is even before we became iPhone App of the Year. We were the most downloaded app in the education category. I just didn't know we were here to stay, but we became the most downloaded app in the education category. And it was because it was free and it was fun and you could actually learn some languages with it. And so that made us kind of stand out, mainly that it was free and fun. And so we were the most downloaded app in the education category. But the next big thing that happened was around 2016, 2017, we started monetizing. Before 2016, 2017, we were not making any money. Duolingo was just free. There were no ads. It was just free. There was no way for us to make money because we didn't have ads in the platform. We didn't have subscription, nothing. We started to make money in 2017. It was actually hard to make money. Not because nobody wanted to pay. It was because internally, our employees didn't want to make money.
Like mission-oriented.
Yeah, no, we had hired, everybody that we had hired was very mission-oriented. And then when I told the company, hey, we need to figure out a way to make money, everybody was like, why? And I'm like, well, let me tell you, we need to pay your salaries, for example. And they would say, but you've been paying our salaries this whole time. What's the problem? And, of course, what we had done is we had raised venture capital, more and more venture capital.
Right.
You can't raise venture capital forever. And so we started trying to figure out how to make money. But it took about 6 months to convince the employees that it was okay to work on this. In fact, the people that we had chosen to work on this were kind of boycotting the work. They didn't want to work on it. They were like, I don't really want to work on that. Mm-hmm. Eventually, what worked is that we were able to convince everybody, and I do believe this to be true, we were able to convince everybody that A, making money is not evil, and B, that if you make money, you can use that to reinvest in your mission and actually grow a lot more and really fulfill your mission a lot faster.
Scale your impact.
That is true, and in fact, that's exactly what happened. As soon as we started making money, we could scale our impact. But I think that the big part of this is when I started seeing that it ended up being relatively easy to monetize Duolingo. I mean, it was hard for the employees, but once we decided to do this, it just every year we started making more and more and more and more money. And that was a big boost for us.
Well, Luis, Jack and I have been keeping a list on the side here because what also catapulted your guys' growth was that you're a psychology company. The way we see Duolingo is psychology. You're a master of mind gamification. I mean, you must have a bunch of psychologists on staff because the push notifications, the streaks, even the mascot, they all tug at just the right psychological chords to get people to open the app.
Let's talk about the psychological growth hacks that got Duolingo to 40 million people opening it every day. What was the first psychological engagement hack that you employed?
The main thing that has set us apart, and especially as an education company, is that our product is engaging. And that is the most important thing. It is also, I believe, the most important thing. If you're trying to learn something by yourself, the hardest thing is staying motivated. So what we do is teach you. And, sometimes people get confused about this. People are sometimes like, whoa, did you know you can learn whatever it is? And not just languages. You can learn whatever on your phone. And I'm like, that's not impressive. You can learn anything on books. Like the reality is you can learn things. There's been hundreds of years where you can learn things by yourself. The hard thing is keeping people motivated. That's the hard part. And the first thing that happened was before we launched.
Luis, can I ask a quick question? When you say it's engaging, how is your app, can you just break down that word for a second? How is your app more engaging than a book?
Well, people use it every day. If you just look at retention, as in the number of people that start and come back the next day, is much higher than a book, I would say. And it's also the word of mouth that we have. Retention gives you scale. And we also look at how much time is spent by people doing it. Essentially, people get quite engaged. We don't like to use the word addicted, but it's kind of like, many people, you could say that they're addicted to it.
So is your app addictive? In
certain ways, it is. I mean, it's extremely engaging. It really gets you to continue doing it and use it every day.
How did you get your app to be so addictive?
Well, the first thing we did was to turn it as much into a game as possible.
Okay.
And this is something that came up even before we launched, and it was because we couldn't get ourselves to use our own app. Before, it was a game. I was trying to learn German because Severin's native language is German, and he was trying to learn Spanish because my native language is Spanish. I made the Spanish course. He made the German course. We were learning each other's language.
Yeah.
We couldn't get ourselves to use it.
Never good when you don't like the taste of your own cooking.
Yeah, this was not good. So then we decided, okay, well, we need to do something about that. And this is when we decided to make it as much into a game as possible. So the first thing we did is, lessons used to be 30 minutes long. We turned them into like 3 minutes long.
Wow.
We added progress bars everywhere. We started giving points. So all of that, it just kind of turned a little bit into a game. That is kind of step one. The next thing we did related to that, this is after we launched, but we added this notion of a streak, which was really powerful, which is a streak just counts the number of days that you've used the app consecutively. And if you stop on a given day, it goes to 0. That has really been transformative for us, the streak. Now, with the streak, you would think that it's just a number that you put in there, and it's just a counter, but it's actually extremely sophisticated. You would not imagine how sophisticated things are. For example, it's not quite true that you can never miss a day. We give you these things that are called streak freezes in case you miss a day.
I've experienced, full disclosure, I've experienced this. I didn't want to admit it publicly, but I'm willing to do so in front of you, Luis. I've told Jack before in private.
We do that, but there's a lot of science behind when to give you a streak freeze so as not to cheapen the streak, but actually get you to keep going. So we give you streak freezes. The other thing about the streak that is really important is the notifications. We cannot let you forget to do your Duolingo. And so we have notifications that tell you, hey, you're going to lose your streak. And there's a lot that goes into what we should say and when we should say it to you so that you don't lose your streak.
Okay.
And at this point, we have a pretty sophisticated, it's basically mostly chosen by AI, when to send the messages. But we also have a very quirky voice. The messages that you get from Duolingo are pretty quirky. And we've A/B tested them like crazy, and they're personalized to you in terms of what works to bring you back. So for some people, we use guilt. For some people, we use different things, and then it really works at bringing you back. So the combination of these two.
And what does that look like? Like, what works for a notification? What does a guilt notification look like? What does the best timing look like? Like, what's optimal here? How are you guys doing it differently?
It ends up being actually quite complicated, but I can tell you some things that we've learned generally. Generally, the time to send you the notification is about 23 and a half hours after you last used Duolingo.
Okay, why is that?
The way to understand that is if you use Duolingo today at 3 p.m., it probably means you're kind of free at 3 p.m. And likely you're kind of free tomorrow at 3 p.m. too.
True.
Unless it's a weekend. Weekends are a little different, but weekdays.
No, you're right.
In terms of what to say, we have found all kinds of things, but one of the most powerful things, we found this many years ago. So we send you a notification, and then if you don't use Duolingo, we send it to you the next day and the next day. After 5 days of inactivity, we stop sending you notifications because we think, we're not going to spam you forever. One of the things that we found is, we thought, well, if we're going to stop sending you notifications after 5 days, we may as well tell you that we're stopping. We're being nice to you. We're not going to spam you forever. We may as well tell you. We didn't think this was going to bring people back, but what we did is we started sending, the last notification that we send says something like, these reminders don't seem to be working. We're going to stop sending them for now. We thought we were just being nice. I didn't realize.
Yeah, you're being honest.
Yeah, but I didn't realize this was an extremely passive-aggressive way to get you to come back.
A little side eye.
I'm picturing the mascot saying this.
It works really well. And that notification, not only did that notification work really well, it also kind of became the basis of our voice.
Like the brand?
We started really realizing, okay, we can be a little more savage. This is what, before that, it was all very technical. This is when we started, and also that notification started giving rise to all these memes about how the owl, really wants you back, and that's all the owl wants is for you to do the language, and he's willing to go through great lengths, including kidnapping your family or whatever it is for you to do your lesson. But it all came from that notification, and then there's all these memes that came about, and our voice really was found. And at this point, we have a pretty quirky voice that is a little savage. It makes fun of you sometimes, but it generally works to get you to come back.
We got to ask you about the owl because we have a long list of questions about the owl, but Jack uses Duolingo to keep up with his German, which he studied in college. I use Duolingo particularly before a trip to Italy to catch up on my Italian in the month leading up to it. So, I'll be walking down the street and someone will hear me say, I am a potato. And I'm actually using Duolingo, but I'm saying it in Italian. Yeah, we were curious, in terms of the different languages people are learning and the cultures where they are learning these, are there differences in terms of what gamification tactics work for people in different countries or learning different languages?
No.
It's universal.
We have heard so much from people who tell us that there are differences. And, we also employ country marketing managers in every country, not every country, in every large country. And they tell us all kinds of things. They're like, Brazilians, they're different for the following reason. Yeah. And they tell us all this stuff. And but people in China, they are different for this reason. Nope. It turns out pretty similar. The things that work pretty much everywhere. Generally, and we just have not found things that are very different everywhere. There's a little bit of, at least not in the app. The app is the same everywhere. Our social media, you have to be a little different in Japan. Okay. Japan's a little different in our social media. But every other country is pretty much the same.
So what are the words you use to describe the motivations that you try to get your users to have? Like, guilt is clearly one of them.
Yeah.
You'll try to make your user feel guilty that they haven't opened the app in the last 7 days.
Streak's about to end, Jack.
Is there also an inspirational version of that push notification?
Yeah, there's inspiration. There's what people want to accomplish. I mean, we have found different parts of the life cycle. Usually when people just sign up to the app, you should be very inspirational. And they're usually very much like, they have dreams about what's going to happen. Then reality hits after a few days when you realize, it's going to take me years to learn a language. Because the reality is it takes years to learn a language. And this is when you start having to apply other things. But yes, motivating messages helps. Friends, of the last few years, Duolingo has become a lot more social. Social connections and social pressure helps quite a bit. And also completionistic stuff, like you've done the last 5 days, are you going to really miss the sixth one? Like kind of completionistics really, really helps.
Do you have a network effect or social proof?
Yeah, we do. I mean, by now, Duolingo, about a third of our users use our social features quite a bit. Those are people that have at least 3 mutual follows, so 3 people that they follow and follow them back. And then, and on Duolingo, you can send congratulations. You can have friend streaks, so a streak together with your friend, etc. About a third of our users use this pretty heavily, and that has network effects.
Before we jump to the mascot, Nick, I just want to point out, I found it wild that Luis volunteered the word addicting.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing.
Because like 39 states attorneys general are going after Instagram for employing addictive features to their app.
I think the TikTok company does not allow the word addictive to be used internally, or you're out of there.
It's Voldemort over at TikTok. However, you're broadcasting it to the world that you're using addictive gamification strategies.
It's hard to say that these are not. However, what I will tell you is that we really are trying to get people. I mean, our ultimate goal is to teach people something. And if you think about it, what we're doing is we're using the same techniques that are used by social media apps or mobile games, etc., because you have to use them. Otherwise, you've lost the competition. I mean, there is a major competition for attention. We ourselves, what I tell people is our competitors are Instagram and TikTok and mobile games. That is who we compete with because we compete for time.
You're saying it's not other language learning apps. We notice you're 12 times bigger than your next closest competitor. They're way behind you.
We have, if you look at active users of language learning apps, we have somewhere between 90 and 95% of them, of all active users of language learning apps. So when we see that somebody leaves Duolingo, they don't go to another language learning app. They just spend more time on Instagram. That's the reality. And so our competitors are TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, all the places where people are spending time. And they are heavily using all of these techniques. If you don't use them, you're
fighting fire with a squirt gun.
You're just not a successful app these days. You're just not.
I don't want to go full Game of Thrones here, but it feels like you guys are saying you're using the same weapons as the enemy, essentially. You're using dragons as well. You're just using them as a force of good, not a force of evil.
I mean, if I could make broccoli addicting, I would find a way to do that for my children. If my teachers made reading books addictive, I would love that. I'm on board.
You're saying addicting doesn't have to be a bad word, Jack.
I mean, that's how we feel. And, again, obviously there's all kinds of things. But, Duolingo, we're far from what would be like a TikTok or whatever. We're, not only are people learning languages, the reality is people spend a lot less time there, etc.
So, Luis, in a world now where you see people saying less screen time, no screens, anti-screens for kids, do you feel like that's a threat, or do you feel like there's an exception here that should be carved out for something like an education app?
I don't think this is a legitimate threat.
Fair.
People say that. That's not what the metrics say.
Could you share more?
This is, I mean, people may say that, but the reality is that this is kind of unstoppable. It's the same as, people saying kids shouldn't watch TV. I mean, like many years ago, I don't know, and like when I was growing up, TV was rotting your brain and you shouldn't watch TV. And I don't think that worked. I think people watch TV. I in a similar way, I mean, I think, this is just what the future is. This is the present even.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
So it's an operating principle at Duolingo that people will be on their screens all day.
I don't know if we have these other operating principles that are actually our operating principles, but it is a belief that people will be on their screen. That's just a belief.
Let's talk about another product you produce that transcends global boundaries, borders, barriers, and culture, which is your mascot. Let's talk mascot strategy here. It's the least techie thing about Duolingo, the mascot, but it might be the most culturally relevant thing that you've accomplished, the unhinged Duolingo owl, Duo.
How did you choose an owl?
We chose an owl because it is, at least in Western cultures, a symbol of knowledge. Turns out actual owls are probably not all that smart and they're vicious. But it's a symbol of knowledge.
But what made you think, as a tech company, we can't think of any tech companies that have a mascot like a sports team. But that's essentially what it is. This is a costume people put on in the office. What made you think you needed a mascot in the first place?
This came very early. Before we launched, we thought that having a mascot would make us friendly as an education company. And so we decided to have a mascot. Then we decided it was going to be an owl. Then we decided it was going to be green because Severin, my co-founder, hates the color green, and we thought it would be funny if it was green. So we've had it all along, and a lot of it, it became so popular. A lot of luck. I mean, we did some stuff. We kind of found our voice, that it was a little unhinged and it was a little guilt-trippy, etc. But it was a little luck that all these things happened. For example, the fact that the memes started with the owl, we didn't start the memes. What we started was that notification that said, it seems like these reminders are not working, we're going to stop sending them. That got the memes to go, and that was not us. Then we ourselves leaned into the memes.
Oh.
We saw that was happening, so we started making fun of ourselves.
Embrace the meme.
We did. And so we produced, for example, an April Fool's video, a lawyer's commercial. You know those really shitty lawyer commercials that you see on TV?
Call 1-800, get law now.
Yeah, we made one of those, but it was a lawyer saying, if your family has been hurt or kidnapped by an owl, I will get you money.
What I love about this is that it has nothing to do with learning a language. This seems completely unrelated.
Not entirely. It's not necessarily learning a language, but it's learning. Look, the best characters out there, they all have something in common. And it is that they want something and they have an obstacle to get it. Duo, the owl, the only thing he wants in life is for you to do your lesson.
Wow.
And the obstacle is that you're lazy. So it is related to learning. I mean, that guy just wants you to do your lesson. And he will go through great lengths to do that. That's what makes him a good character. But a lot of this just kind of evolved through time. It's not like when we started the company, we're like, and we're going to have this owl that's going to do crazy dances on TikTok or whatever. So there was that. The other thing that happened is a few years ago, already the owl was pretty popular. But a few years ago, we started a social media strategy that honestly started despite me. I didn't want to do that, which was doing these videos with the owl suit. The first one I thought, this is pretty low production. We spent so much effort on our app being very high production, like millions of dollars on the app being high production. And then we saw these videos that were like super low fidelity and low production. I'm like, what is this? But it turned out people really, really liked this. And that has made it super popular on TikTok. At this point, our owl is so popular that it has an agent.
The mascot has a talent agent.
Yes, internally. Like we have a person in our marketing team, there is an agent. But what's amazing about it is it's so popular now that famous people want to interact with the owl without us paying. So we just get all these famous people wanting to do collabs with the owl, or because sometimes the owl has more followers than they do, or our videos become more popular, etc. So it's been a pretty big deal for us.
Yeah, probably was the reverse of how it started out. You would have paid to have Duo the owl hanging out with Dua Lipa the singer, and now it's vice versa. She wants to date Duo the owl.
The old switcheroo.
It really is this thing. I mean, before people were coming to us to try to pay them to hang out with us, that is no longer the case.
Luis, You said that your employees early on were very mission-oriented. I'm sure they still are today.
They still are.
You did that TED Talk, and you told us that wealthy people pay for the Duolingo app so that poor people can use it for free.
Why is Duolingo the rare app used by both migrants and MBAs?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that, it's free to use Duolingo. You can use it and you really don't have to pay us. We don't really block you from anything or anything. You just use it. And that has made it so that it's really the whole socioeconomic spectrum uses Duolingo. Like Syrian refugees in Europe are using Duolingo to learn the language of the country that they relocated to. At the same time, on the other side, we have a bunch of famous people or billionaires that use Duolingo. And it really is because it's accessible to everybody. And this really is what we wanted to achieve. We wanted it to be the case that if you had more money, you couldn't get a better system. It's the same system is being used by people who have no money versus billionaires. So that's usage. Now, we have to make money somehow. And it turns out the way we make money is quite compatible with this, because the way we make money is we have this freemium model, which is if you don't pay us, you can use Duolingo as much as you want, but you have to see an ad at the end of a lesson. We make some money from the ads, but if you don't like ads, you can turn off the ads by paying us to subscribe. Turns out a small fraction of our users pay us to subscribe. So if you look at our monthly active users, only about 10% of them pay us to subscribe. But this 10% gives us 80 to 90% of our revenue comes from this 10%. So that we don't make that much money from ads. We make most of our money from the subscription.
As context with like Netflix or other subscription services, it's a much higher percentage that are paying.
Much higher. Yes, that's where the money comes from. Now, what is interesting for us is because the app is freemium, what ends up happening is that people who don't have a lot of money just don't pay. The people who pay are usually relatively wealthy, and I'm not talking, they may not be millionaires. But, people with stable jobs in well-to-do countries, that's who pays us. And the people who don't pay us are usually people who may not have a job or who live in a poor country, like, in Brazil or Vietnam or something. So what we like about this is that it really is the case that the wealthy people are paying for the education of everybody. And
they probably don't even realize it.
Probably not, but it is something that we like a lot.
Have you ever thought about making these wealthy users realize it?
Yeah, I mean, we tell them, actually. Sometimes we say by, subscribing, you're helping support free education for everyone. So we say that, and that does get people to buy. But the main thing that gets people to buy is turning off the ads.
Let's be honest. Have you noticed different characteristics between those using your app to learn English and those learning your app for other languages?
Yes. English is a unique language. It really is very different from all the other languages in terms of the desire to learn it. Mm-hmm. Some people sometimes say that they worry that Chinese is going to be like that. I can tell you we have the numbers. No. English is a unique language that everybody wants to learn. Not very many people want to learn Chinese. The reason it's unique is because it is the one language where really knowing it makes you more money. Yeah, most other languages, knowing them, unless you want to move to that country, but generally, it's usually a hobby. Generally, when we talk to people that use Duolingo that are learning any language that is not English, you ask them, why are you learning the language? The most common answers are like, oh, I used to play a lot of Candy Crush, and now, at least I'm learning a little bit of Spanish. Like, that's that. But for English, it's different. When you ask them why are you using the app, they're like, no, I need to learn English.
Wow.
And I need to learn English because I need to make more money. So English learners, people who are learning English, are just dramatically different from people who are learning other languages in every aspect.
Is English the top language in every country?
No, not in the US, for example, it's Spanish, because most people already know English here. But in non-English speaking countries, English is the top language to learn.
Yetis, we're about to take a short break, and then Luis will announce Duolingo's next big product. So, Luis, we know your ambitions are so much more than language learning. 2022, you launched math learning. 2023, you launched music learning.
We're excited for you to announce your next big product right now on the best one yet.
Yes, I'm very happy to announce this. Like you said, on Duolingo, now you can learn languages and math and music. We're adding another subject, and it is not one that many people have expected, and it is that you will be able to learn chess on Duolingo.
Chess?
It's a game. But it is, it's an after-school program, and it is a game that really can make you smarter. We know there's just a lot of people who tell you, very similar as with Spanish, where they're just like, I've always wanted to learn chess, but I'm kind of never really had the time, or it seems intimidating, etc. So our goal is to get a lot of people into chess. And the idea is to let them learn how to think logically, one of the reasons why we started, there's a number of reasons why we started, but one of the reasons I greenlit the project, by the way, was not my idea to teach chess, but I greenlit it. And one of the reasons was because in my country, in Guatemala, our education system in Guatemala is just not working. One of the things that the Minister of Education told me was, look, we're failing so much that at this point, I just want them to learn how to think somewhat. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to start teaching them chess. Because it's at the very least, they learn how to think logically.
Learn how to think.
And that's the thing about chess. It lets you learn this kind of if-then-else statements. If I move here, you will do that, and then I'll do that. And then, so it just really gets you to think logically. And so we're pretty excited about it. We also think there's a large audience for it. I don't have a very precise date for it, but it's coming pretty soon. Yeah, it's an amazing project. It's all kinds of good things that have happened since we started working on it.
Huge congratulations, Luis. Jack and I know how much goes into a product launch. We always say ABLE, always be launching everything. Can you tell us how this began beyond that insight from Guatemala? Like internally as a team, how did you guys build this? How did you choose chess?
There's a number of things that happen, but in terms of how we chose chess, we're looking for subjects to teach that have very large audiences. I mean, hundreds of millions of people want to learn them. Chess, I believe, is one of those things. We also are looking for things that will somehow make you smarter, that we actually really want you to, improve yourself. And we're also looking for things that take years to learn. We're not so interested in things that you can learn in like a month. Then we'll lose you as a user. So we want to do years to learn. And chess is something that you can really get better at for years.
So you're looking at for something where there are a lot of potential players or a lot of potential users where there's an opportunity to learn, and it's going to take a long time to learn.
This is the things that we're looking at. And one other thing that we can do a good job with a mobile product.
Okay.
Yeah, so swimming wouldn't work. A lot of people want to swim.
Yeah. And chess is perfect for a mobile. So all of those things were true. Then what happened was we have a person internally who we love. His name is Tyler Murphy. He's been here forever, and he's started a lot of really our major initiatives. Tyler came to me and he said, I want to do chess. And, I went through the list and I'm like, it satisfies everything that we want.
It checks every box.
Let's do this. And so Tyler started working on chess with this other guy, Edwin, two very long-time employees at Duolingo. And neither of them is an engineer. Tyler's a designer and Edwin's a product manager. And what was amazing about chess is of all other projects that we started in the past, we needed to put like a team on them with engineers and everything. In this case, we did not. We just let them, we're like, okay, you know what? At the moment, I have no engineers to give you. You figure it out.
Side hustler.
And what they did is they basically started messing with large language models. And for the first several months, they made an entire chess course through large language models, no engineering required. But they came to me with prototypes that they had made, even though these people are not engineers, of like how to learn chess on Duolingo. And it was just the two of them, and it took them a few months. Now, of course, by now, we're about to launch. We now have a team that has actual engineers to put the stuff in the app, et cetera. But for the first several months, normally, we would have put a much larger team. It would have taken us much longer. But this really is a case that with large language models, we were able to do this really fast, actually.
So two non-engineers plus AI have led to the next big Duolingo launch, chess, that you're now all in on.
100%. That is what happened. Again, I do want to emphasize, we now have engineers and a team and everything. But this is, this is what happened for the first, call it, 6 months.
How big a bonus are you going to give Tyler and Edwin?
Why'd you ask that? Now you put, because I know these two dudes are going to be listening to this podcast, and now they're going to be like, yo, where's my bonus? Why'd you do that?
Jack, I think I see the owl showing up behind Luis with a checkbook.
What is this? Don't do that. Don't do that. Anyways, they deserve huge bonuses. They're amazing, and what they did was amazing.
Very excited for this, too, because, Jack and I were college roommates, and I believe we started a game of chess once, Jack, where, you moved a rook, and then I asked you what rook meant, and then I moved a bishop, and you said, you can't move the bishop like that. I think we never finished that game, so I think we're overdue for this thing.
It's pretty clear you did not know how to play, but now you can learn on Duolingo.
I need to get a streak going, Luis.
Called a castle.
I'm telling you, what's amazing about, I've been using it, of course, it really gets you from zero. Not only do you learn how to move the pieces, which is important, but also you learn strategy, and you get to a pretty good spot.
Also a great time to launch a chess product. I feel like the chess world is getting disrupted right now by technology. There's that new alternative to the World Chess Championship that does random chess, where the board starts just randomly, not the way it's supposed to.
And Jack, we've covered other chess companies that have gone viral since the pandemic, which are a little bit more advanced, I think. I think those are focused on like your advanced players who want to play more complicated games. So this is kind of like, it looks like you're targeting like an entry point, Luis.
This is it. I mean, eventually we'll probably do higher levels, but at the moment we're targeting entry point. I mean, if you either don't know anything about chess or roughly know how to move the pieces but don't feel very comfortable playing chess with anybody because you think you're going to get beaten, this is a great product for you to use. And that's a lot of people. I should say one other thing which is really interesting, and this is a big belief we have at Duolingo. You know, the first 20 employees of Duolingo were not very good at learning languages. We were not language nerds. We were none of that. I'm not very good at learning a language, and I'm not a language nerd. I'm not particularly interested in learning languages. And what that did is it made us create a product for the average person. Had we been language nerds, we would have made a product for language nerds.
Interesting.
And I think this is true. And by the way, Tyler and Edwin, they are not excellent chess players. I can tell you that. I am not an excellent chess player, but I'm pretty sure I'm significantly better than they are. These people, I think a few months ago, were still kind of figuring out, how the knight moves. But it's amazing because I really do think they are making a product for the actual beginner.
You see Luis knocking Tyler and Edwin down a peg or two for that.
No. Hold on. Love these guys. I'm not saying anything they don't know, okay?
He's channeling owl. He's channeling the owl. Luis, we were lucky to have a pre-interview chat with you. And yet, just so you know, when Jack and I do these interviews, we like to speak with our guest a week before so we get to know them and really kind of get a sense of everything they want to talk about too and what we want to talk about. And in our pre-interview chat last week, you told us that artificial intelligence was a huge area of focus. And you also just revealed it was basically the third player launching your latest product. Now, honestly, the way Jack and I see artificial intelligence being in the media business is it can be both a threat and an opportunity at the same time.
First, the threat. Bloomberg reported in March that Apple is working on real-time language translation built into AirPods powered by AI.
So that would look like a threat to a Duolingo.
At the same time, AI allowed you to launch AI tutors, which is your new premium product. You can practice your German with an AI, what's her name, Lily?
With Lily, yeah.
That sounds really cool because Lily's not going to judge me if I misconjugate my German verbs.
Which you wouldn't, Jack. You're doing fantastic. You got a 12-day streak going. So we got to ask, is AI a threat or is AI an asset?
Oh, for us, it's a major positive.
Okay.
From the beginning, and this is, by the way, it's the last couple of years that it's like AI is the next crypto. It's like, it's a big thing. But, when we started Duolingo a million years ago, AI already existed. It's not like the large language models, but we were big believers that it will be a computer that teaches you. And I think in the future, the more and more this will happen, that the primary way of teaching learning is going to be learning through a computer.
To your credit, Luis, we looked at your IPO paperwork before this interview, and this was before ChatGPT.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, first thing, we did notice a typo in your IPO paperwork.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. No,
no.
It
You
was
don't
perfect.
understand how many times that was read. You don't understand how many times that was read. If there was a typo, shit.
No, you don't have to fire Morgan Stanley. No typos, we promise. But we did go through your IPO paperwork. What did we notice, Jack?
We Control-F'd it, and we found artificial intelligence mentioned 8 times. So yeah, you were thinking about it before this virality.
We were. And we've been for a long time. I mean, the reality is we really have thought that a computer can teach you. We still believe that. It is a computer. There's so many good things about a computer teaching you. It's infinitely patient. It is way cheaper to teach you through a computer, so all kinds of things. Especially, and if you're practicing conversation, the beautiful thing is you don't feel bad practicing conversation with a computer in a language that you're not very comfortable with. But if you're practicing with another human, a lot of people are shy about that. And so this is just better.
Nick, I was a German major, and then I worked at a German bank after college.
Yeah.
And sometimes I had to speak to German clients on the phone. But I had a cubicle surrounded by my peers. And every time I had to speak German, I would book a conference room to make sure I was in a private place because it's embarrassing.
It just is.
I speak Italian sometimes. I'm not speaking at this volume when I'm speaking Italian.
Right.
The same thing happens to me. And when I speak a language that I'm not very comfortable, I mumble it because I'm like, because I'm shy. I'm shy about it.
It makes you feel foolish.
Yes, but when you're talking to a computer, you don't feel foolish. So I really do think it can be a positive. In terms of the threats, people say all kinds of stuff. Like, for example, like you said, there's going to be real-time translation. Why do you need to learn a language? The reality is that real-time translation has been around. Google Translate has worked really well, and it has been very fast, and it's been around for a long time. It's actually quite useful for things like traveling. If you don't really want to learn a language at all, and you're traveling to a country that for some random reason nobody speaks English, which by the way these days is very rare, you can use this to kind of get around real-time translation, and it's great. But if you look at our users, the two buckets of users, one is people who are learning as a hobby. I don't think they're going to be affected by real-time translation. It's a hobby. It's the same reason why people learn chess, for example. Computers have been really good at chess for at least 20 years. People still learn chess. So it's this hobby. And then the other big group of people that are learning a language here are learning English, and they actually want to learn. It's not going to be good enough for them to be walking around with airports all the time. They actually want to learn English.
Luis, there was one word you've mentioned before that Jack and I were fascinated by. We were shocked you used because we haven't heard any other techies use it. Maybe because we are with so many in the Bay Area. But you said the word artistic. You employ literally hundreds of artists at Duolingo. They craft the branding, the imagery, the clever notifications that you mentioned before. We were curious about the artists.
I really believe that this is something that has differentiated Duolingo. We call it the design department. It's mostly art. There are a lot of artists in there. About 150 people in there.
Wow.
By the way, bear in mind, this is a company, the entire company has 900 people.
Wow.
So about 150 people are, artists.
Art majors.
And it's amazing because they come up with all the unexpected stuff. They're the ones who come up with, for example, we did a Super Bowl commercial last Super Bowl, not this one. What it was is it was the owl, and he was sitting backwards. You could just see his back, but you could see his butt crack. And then it started growing, like his butt started growing. And then suddenly what it was another owl grew out of the owl's butt.
AI can't come up with that.
And then it just said, do your Duolingo.
You need an art degree to come up with that concept.
Who comes up with that? This was, internally, our artists just came up with that. And it made no sense. And what the hell? But it was, one of the most talked about, it may have been the most talked about, or one of the most talked about Super Bowl commercials. It was only 5 seconds, and it was just the owl's butt growing into another owl. But this is an example of the stuff they come up with. They come up with really weird stuff. And I actually believe that as AI matures, what's going to be most valuable is taste. Because you could just do all kinds of things. For example, coding is getting easier and easier. And so probably a lot of the engineers are going to become kind of conductors of coding. And I think just having all these artists here is very valuable because they have a lot of taste. I mean, they really kind of have an idea of what's weird and what's quirky and what's unhinged that lets us go move the brand forward.
If the AI revolution makes us all more artistic, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it'll make us more artistic. I think the artists are going to do better. And by the way, there's something that one of our engineers, I was talking to one of our engineers who pointed this out. Before like 50 years ago, math nerds were not in a good spot. They kind of were ostracized. And at some point, because of technology, math nerds, like the richest people in the world are math nerds. And like they got a boon. It's likely that because of AI, math nerds are not going to be all that valuable anymore.
It's cyclical.
So basically, we had a good 50-year run. Like us math nerds, I am a math nerd. We had a good 50-year run. It's probably over, and it's going to be back to the artists.
This leads to a big question that the Yetis and the Besties, our listeners, ask Luis, which is, we want to be the best at what we do. How do we focus our careers? A lot of them are business school students, or they're just, they're working in marketing, or they work at a bank, or they have a job where they're curious about the next 5 years, and they're maybe worried about the threat of AI. So
what advice would you give people in the age of AI?
Look, I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. It is our belief at Duolingo. I've told this to people because sometimes people here ask me, is our computer going to take my job? What I tell everyone is a computer is not going to take your job. A person that can use AI will take your job if you don't use AI.
Uh-huh.
So the one thing that I'll tell you is no matter what, do not stick your hand in the sand and not use AI. Get as good as possible with these tools as you can. Do everything you can with these tools. And that's what we're telling people internally. That, I think, is a no-brainer. Like, you should just do that. Now, in terms of what to concentrate on, that's very hard to say.
It's almost like we asked you earlier, is AI an asset or a threat? And you, without hesitation, said asset.
Yeah.
I feel like your advice is almost people need to get to a place where they have that same response.
Yes.
They need to tell themselves it is an asset.
That's step one, accepting that it's the asset.
But it's inevitable. AI will come and you cannot stop it. And it is coming, and who knows at what speed and who knows, but it is inevitable. So best thing you can do is jump on that.
Make AI an asset so that you're better at your job.
I thought you were going to say make AI great again. So I thought that's what you were going to say.
Another way to put it, if you have the opportunity to go to MIT or RISD, Duolingo thinks you should go to RISD.
That's your words, not mine.
One thing Jack and I noticed in our research, thinking of you guys as a psychology company, is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. How do you guys think about that, and how do you employ it? And what is that exactly?
Intrinsic motivation is your motivation to like actually do the thing. And extrinsic is, you're getting rewards for doing the thing, for example. Most people are very lazy, even the motivated ones. This is something we embrace a lot at Duolingo. For example, one of the things we do is in all our screens, there's very little text in them outside of what the actual exercise is, because the mantra at Duolingo is people don't read. It's because most people are very lazy.
Yeah.
And so our belief is that there's some intrinsic motivation that humans have for doing things, but it's not large enough to get them to do the things that would really benefit them. And this is why we spend a lot of effort trying to get them to, motivate them to learn. The reality is most of us are motivated to do things that give us quick dopamine hits, like TikTok.
If it's not fun, it won't work.
Yeah, great quote of yours that we noticed. Luis, like we mentioned, we dive in deep T-Boy style, and we've pretty much seen and read every single interview you've ever done to prepare for today's show. But the one quote you've said that we love the most is that one. If it's not fun, it won't work.
We believe that actually with our show. There's an obvious value for news and staying informed, but people's intrinsic motivation only goes so far. So we try to make our show fun. But if learning has to be fun to survive and news has to be fun to survive, is there a place in this world for not fun things?
You know what the problem is? We got scientific and we got really good at figuring out how to take your attention, not Duolingo, like humanity. Like, 100 years ago, it was a book.
Yeah.
And then we discovered TV. TV is just way more engaging than books. Okay, good. Then we discovered like social media is way more engaging than TV. The thing is, and we get more and more scientific and better at keeping your attention. I think, unfortunately, the boring stuff is gone because there's just so much amazing things that just keeps your attention. We just got scientific about it and we got good at it. And so at this point, my sense is you just have to really fight for people's attention, and you have to be using the techniques that are now best understood. It's kind of a similar, you could have said TV is really bad, but when I grew up, there was the Discovery Channel. Before it turned into like reality TV, it was like actual science. But they were trying to use the same medium that all the other stuff was, but for teaching you. It's kind of a similar thing that what we're trying to do here with Duolingo.
So any advice for our Yetis and besties in the audience who are building something to make something fun so that it'll work?
Well, the first step is that you should like it and people around you should like it. It's hard to make fun things. First of all. The second piece of advice that I have is, and I like to tell this to a lot of people here at Duolingo, I have never seen a successful product that got really successful in under call it 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Of work. I mean, you may not have launched it, but everything takes this. Good products take 3-4 years, and this is the fast ones. You just need the time in the oven, and this is I use this line here internally. You just need the time in the oven.
It's like lasagna. It just takes a while.
It just takes a while, and no product has had overnight success that remains. As in, if it's long-term success, if you're talking about whatever products, Instagram, ChatGPT, all of these things that have a lot of success. They were years in the making.
I believe this is known as the lasagna principle, Jack. Luis's lasagna principle.
It just takes a while.
Take some time in the oven.
It just takes a while.
You got to leave it in the oven a bit.
Well, Luis, you have an inspirational story. Your company has done an amazing thing, which is make learning fun.
We're addicted in a good way.
Good, yes, in a good way. For something useful.
We think it's fantastic that you're fighting the fire of TikTok with their fire tactics. And it's just been amazing talking to you. Congratulations on all your success. And we're thrilled that you announced the product of chess on Duolingo on our show.
Jack and I can finally finish that game, knight to queen's rook.
You need to take back that illegal move, probably.
I need a streak.
Well, Luis, at the end of every story, we decide what the takeaway is.
So we want to hear from you, Luis. What's the takeaway from you, the co-founder of Duolingo, on Duolingo?
Well, the biggest thing, I keep telling people, and nobody seems to listen to me, but I tell people, the hardest thing about learning something by yourself is staying motivated. For some reason, there are a lot of education companies where, at the moment, and of course, this can change with the stock market and everything, but at the moment, we're by a margin the most valuable education company out there. And the main insight for us is not that we teach better, etc. I do believe we teach better, but the main insight is we keep people learning. And I think that's a big takeaway for Duolingo.